This is Politer. I recorded this on December 20th, 2022. My friend Harlan Venison is trying to write a paper on who is a minority in the United States. Is it black women? Is it Muslim women? And we're thinking to ourselves, could be possibly deaf people, as the best movie of 2022 after the Will Smith slap. It was a movie about deaf people. Then we think about the words liberals like to use. I just so happen to be neurodivergent. I just so happen to be ableist, right? Al was thinking just men, but Warren T. Farrell covers that, the myth of male power. Al says he thinks of a paper that fits the realm of diversity, right? So I was thinking about the neurodivergent word. I was thinking about myself, thinking about it. What happened was in the 90s, the elite whites went against the poor whites and dubbed them as autistic, Asperger's, or mentally retarded, these like fake fictional labels. And after years of institutionalization throughout the 90s and all the propaganda shit to make sure they don't leave West Virginia and throwing them into like special education class and all that brainwashing, the same like kids that were dubbed started to embrace the term like a liberal identity politic. So now they're like, I'm proud I'm autistic. I'm proud I'm neurodivergent. And it's literally like some like Mike Judge idiocracy shit. But more importantly, Al brought up the real term, and that was lacking in ambition, quote unquote. And I thought that was definitely like capitalist brainwashing. I was thinking about how in Paul Fussell's book about class, how like elite whites don't care about being labeled with those terms is because they're the one pushing the labels against the poor whites, just to control them. And then the middle class whites are having knife fights with one another, betraying one another just so they can get accepted by the rich whites. And furthermore, in Fussell's class, the elite know and can tell middle class begging to try to emulate the elite. So they just ignore it because the elite can do whatever they want and don't care about these problems. It's middle class people creating the problems for themselves. So Harlan Venison also brought up, continuing on this trend of thinking, quote, a fundamental way of looking at the liability of the ruling class is that for decades they increasingly cited lack of ambition as basically the sole cause of people not getting what they want in life in the West. To do so, they compounded the problem, making people think that if they want something enough, they will get it, unquote. This is definitely neoliberalism in a nutshell. You could use the economic definition of neoliberalism and say a free market capitalism where anybody and everything is privatized and you can get as so much power as you want, mind your own business, anti-paternalism. But you can also say in the postmodern sense of neoliberalism that it's also an attitude. It's also a subcultural way of thinking about things, that it requires some axioms and truths in order to operate. It isn't just foisted and institutionalized. It's also, a certain type of person is propagating that. So the ideal of lack of ambition, that means they're using capitalist logic to say, produce now. You have to go out there and innovate, and that's the only way you're going to make profit. And this also, knocks down theories of being economically dependent or having secure work. So there's already a semantic flaw in there, just like, quote unquote, Black Lives Matter or save black businesses. You can't be anti-capitalist and in that statement alone, or it advocates egalitarianism or the main traits, individualism. And so when they want it, when the elites want something, they could practice feudalism and say, you are a slave, build the pyramids now. I mean, that would be face forward and honest. But instead, it's a social Darwinian Malthusian technique where, all right, if you don't want to work for it, go and die. I mean, they're literally twisting Christian Puritanism verses from the Bible, and then they're saying that all the Jews and the Asians who feel like it, fetching the carrot in front, will make it. And I'll just wait on it. And honestly, this is what Nick Land talks about with accelerationist theory is. It's, believing in this neoliberalism, you're all doing it yourself. And then, if you're not going to do it, someone else will do it. It's a very strange way of thinking about things, but I think that will ultimately collapse is because, well, the flaw of the entire argument is what trade and skills I don't have, why should that not get me money? Is desire something people make out of thin air? I want cigarettes. Someone make the cigarettes for me, please. This desire random market shit. It seems like there's also devaluing that we go to college to learn a skill everyone must be ignorant about, right? So, the only way Johnny can make money is if he becomes a nuclear scientist. Normies don't know how to be a nuclear scientist. Bingo, that's supply and demand. I want you to do that. It seems to be, if I have the red key, I can open up red doors. And here's Max Weber style bureaucratic authority, that it's an information game happening. Furthermore, long story short, the elites want, or at least the capitalist system wants, a skill from you that is incredibly subjective and non-existent. And it changes times 9 because of this bizarre bipolar demand or interest. Hence, everything is not secure economically speaking. It assumes this skill requires esoteric knowledge, creating a binary between those who know or have it versus those who don't have it or don't know. This means we are always ignorant, and the quote-unquote skill means knowing what they want. And this is ultimately unstable for all of America and of societies. This is basically what Max Weber talked about in bureaucratic authority. That is, our elites are even afraid just to push people to make a fucking bridge, right? Because they just want to practice Malthusianism and social Darwinian politics. They know the secrets and they got to keep everyone out. Again, this really boils down to if you have money or not. That's really the logic of capitalism. This is what Fox News Republicans called socialism for me, but not for thee. In other words, rich people can have socialism, hence that's why they vote Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden. It seems like once you have 20 million or even 5 million in the trust, you can do whatever you want in America. It doesn't matter. And I think what rich white people do is they want to emulate poor whites. So there's no such thing as hillbillies in West Virginia. And by default, if you're born white, you're immediately rich. And I think that's what, there's a soft dysgenics program going on, trying to kill off poor whites so white people can become second-class Jews. With that being said, once you have lots of money, you can fall under neoliberal ideology and subculture. Why would you go against it? You have 5 million in the trust fund. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You get any woman you want, any car you want. And so that has created an entire culture of quote-unquote freedom-based power. Now, I think what's happening is that is such a minority. That is such a 5-10% of the nation. But that 5-10% of the nation rules over the 90%, everyone else. And I think, this sounds like silly Marxist theory, but it's true. The proletariat ocean will go over the bourgeois island. It's just going to be at an expense where we're probably going to be like Brazil or something if that continues. If you read this and look at something of the IMF crisis that happened in Korea, the Koreans are an amazing type of people. This didn't happen in Japan, it didn't happen in China, and it didn't happen in Thailand or Southeast Asia. What happened was during the mid-90s, the United States government stopped using Korea as a consumer or as a buyer of exported products. And so that was horrible because so much in the 90s, the Korean government relied on exportation. Korea was naturally destroyed by the United States government and not Japan. And this is because the United States they chose China and they chose Japan. But, as a digression here, long story short, Japan blew up and got destroyed by 2000. But how did the Korean people got out of this capitalist gunpoint death threat of owning somewhat $1 billion? Well, in a paternal government system, all 30 million Koreans were told by the media and the government to get any money and gold they have and donate to get out of debt. They played the capitalist game by telling every single individual human being through paternalism, every Korean being, and they all donated gold. And guess what? They basically solved the issue, and they paid off their debt. The capitalists didn't win. NATO didn't win. The global clown world shit that wanted to put Korea on lockdown, they beat them by playing their own game, by being paternal. If the same type of paternalism happens in the United States of America, disguised in 2020 as getting a vax and wearing a mask, the Koreans did it much better to escape death threat capitalism.